What happens when a billionaire, full of pride and boredom, tries to embarrass a server by asking her for investment advice? He thought she would say something simple like, buy cheap, sell high, or just blush and walk away. He believed it was just a joke, but he and his two yes men were not ready for her answer. They were discussing a $500 million business deal, a company secret, and when she said her first words, the laughter stopped and a multi-billion-dollar business empire was shaken deeply. This is not a story about a joke. It is a story about what happens when you look down on the person serving your meal. The air at the Golden Oak restaurant was thick enough to cut. It smelled of old wealth, expensive beef, and the sharp scent of $1,000 wine bottles being opened. This was Mark Davis's natural home, though he usually liked the cleaner, glass and steel feeling of his own office tower. Tonight, however, was a party. Mark Davis, the giant of technology, whose company Davis Tech had its reach in everything from cloud storage to space research, was eating dinner with his two top managers, Robert Miller and David Stone. They were celebrating the quiet purchase of Nova Biosystems, a medium-sized medical technology company. The board gave up, David said, his voice low and full of false praise. They did not know what happened. We got it for nothing. It is not nothing until the papers are signed and the government approves, Mark said, not looking up from his phone. He was checking Forbes, watching his own wealth grow higher. It was acceptable. Robert, the more nervous of the two, spoke up. Acceptable, sir. We got them for $500 million. Their technology alone is worth that. Mark finally put down his phone and looked at them. His eyes were a pale ice blue, and they had no warmth. Their technology was worth that. The market is pricing in the hope. We are paying for the reality. It was messy. You left $30 million on the table. You were too excited. Robert and David clearly deflated. The celebration turned sour. This was Mark's way. He did not just win, he had to be the only one who knew how to win. It was into this tense silence that Elena Martinez walked. She was the table's server for the evening. Her uniform, a clean white shirt and black apron, was perfect, but it hung slightly loose on her body as if it belonged to someone else. Her dark hair was pulled back in a tight bun, and her face was pale, filled by large, smart eyes that were now focused on the water glass at the edge of their table. She moved with a skill that made her almost invisible. She refilled Robert's glass without him noticing. She cleared the bread plates with the silent grace of a ghost. Mark, however, noticed everything. He watched her. There was a stillness to her, a tightly controlled energy that felt out of place. She was not just tired, she was contained. "Another bottle, Mr. Davis?" she asked, her voice low and neutral. Mark waved the dismissive hand. "We are moving on to the Highland 50, and bring my partners whatever they're having." Robert and David ordered cheaper 18-year-old drinks, not wanting to assume. Elena nodded once and turned to leave. That is when Mark decided to have his fun. The wine, the successful but boring deal, the way his men agreed with everything, it all made him feel a little cruel. "Wait, miss," he called out. Elena stopped and turned, her face a mask of professional patience. "Yes, sir?" "You have been very efficient," he smiled, a thin, snake-like gesture. Robert and David saw the smile and immediately tensed, unsure if they should laugh or be silent. "You are good with numbers, I assume. All those tips, adding and taking away, it's a lot." Elena's expression did not change. "I manage, sir." "Good, good." He leaned forward, joining his fingers. "See, my friends and I, we have a little financial problem, a debate. We just spent, let us call it $500 million on a new company. Tell me." He paused for drama, making sure nearby tables could hear his casual kindness. "What is your expert financial advice for us? What should we do with our new toy? You tell me." Robert let out a choked laugh. David looked down at his plate, grinning. It was a joke, a looking-down power move joke from a man who owned continents. They expected her to blush, to stutter, to say, "I don't know, sir," or "Put money in stocks." Elena was silent for a full 3 seconds. The background noise of the restaurant, the clinking of silver, the murmur of conversations seemed to fade into a dull roar. She looked not at Robert or David, but directly at Marcus Davis. Her eyes, no longer patient, were suddenly sharp, analytical. "You mean Nova Biosystems?" she said. It was not a question. The grins vanished from Robert's and David's. Mark's smile froze, the corners of his mouth twitching. His blood ran cold. The deal was unannounced. It was known only to their boards and legal teams. And you paid $500 million? You were not excited, Mr. Davis. You were foolish. You are overpaying by at least 18%, probably closer to 22%. Mark was speechless. Their main product, a third-generation gene-reading technology, is based on a research model that is about to be replaced by a new, better version coming out of a lab in Berlin. Their third-quarter predictions are based entirely on that single failing technology. She took a small step closer, lowering her voice further. In their supply system, it is 80% dependent on the rising cost of lithium for their portable reading units, a cost that your own company's new battery division is responsible for. You just bought a boat anchor, Mr. Davis, and you used your own ship to deliver it to yourself. She finished. The silence was absolute. Robert's mouth was open. David looked like he was going to be sick. Mark Davis, the man who had terrified Wall Street and Silicon Valley for 2 decades, had been left utterly, completely speechless. Mark's mind, which normally worked like a high-speed trading computer, had just crashed. He stared at the server. She had not broken eye contact. There was no victory in her look, no gotcha smirk. It was the flat, cold look of a doctor delivering a diagnosis. Robert Miller was the first to find his voice, which came out as an angry squeak. "Now you listen here. Who do you think you are? You cannot just... You are fired. Manager, get the manager." Elena did not flinch. She did not even look at Robert. Her focus remained laser-locked on Mark. "Shut up, Robert," Mark whispered. His voice was dangerously quiet. The ice blue in his eyes was flash-freezing. He turned his full, terrifying attention to Elena. "Who are you?" "I am Elena Martinez," she said simply. "Your server. Would you like me to bring that Highland 50 now?" "How did you know the name?" Mark demanded, ignoring her question. "Nova Biosystems. That name was not spoken at this table. It was not in any public filing."
"You said technology and medical company. Robert," she nodded at him, "mentioned getting them for nothing. David," she nodded at him, "said the board gave up. There are only 2 medium biotech companies with weak boards and strong technology in play right now, Nova and GeneTech. Your buying of GeneTech would be an antitrust nightmare as Davis Tech already competes in their primary market. That leaves Nova." It was not a hard guess. Mark was stunned by the cold, brutal logic. She had not overheard, she had figured out the rest of it. Mark pressed. "The technology, the lithium, how?" This time, a flicker of something, impatience, tiredness, crossed her face. The German paper on the new gene variant was published in Science 6 weeks ago. Anyone in the field would have seen it. The lithium dependency, you would have to cross-check Nova's component supplier filings with the public market data from your own battery division. It is all public record. It just takes time to connect the dots. "Time?" Mark repeated. "Time you supposedly have while waiting tables?" David Stone, seeing an opportunity to regain his footing and impress his boss, surged forward. "She is a corporate spy. She has to be. This is a setup, Mark. She's working for TechCorp, or maybe even Sterling Capital. She's been feeding information." "Do not be an idiot, David," Mark snapped, his fury turning on his manager. "A spy does not walk up to the table and tell you you're a spy smiles, takes your order, and sells the information tomorrow. This is something else." He looked back at Elena. "You just cost yourself a $1,000 tip. You might have just cost yourself this job." "I'm aware," Elena said. "I also just saved you from having to write down a $90 million loss at your next earnings call, which would have put a significant dent in your quarterly bonus pool." She looked at Robert and David. "You are welcome." With that, she placed the small black leather bill folder on the table. "My shift just ended. Your meal has been comped, courtesy of the manager I radioed on my way over. Good evening, gentlemen." She turned and began to walk away. "Wait," Mark barked. Elena stopped but did not turn around. "You were right about one thing," Mark said. His voice was different now. The arrogance was gone, replaced by a calculating curiosity. "I left $30 million on the table. My team, they were too excited." He shot a poisonous glare at Robert and David, who both shrank in their seats. "Get out," Mark said to them. "Sir?" Robert stammered. "Get out, both of you. Go back to the hotel. I'll see you in the morning. And Robert, find a new job. David, you're on probation. Now go." The two managers, white-faced and terrified, practically scrambled from their chairs, grabbing their coats and fleeing the restaurant, leaving their half-drunk $1,000 glasses of scotch behind. The dining room was silent. Mark Davis was alone at his table. Elena Martinez still had her back to him. "You are not a server," he stated. "Tonight I was," she said, her shoulders slumping just a fraction. "I'm staying at the Regency, Suite 2100. Be there tomorrow, 8 a.m. "I am not for hire, Mr. Davis." "I am not offering you a job, Miss Martinez. I'm offering you a life raft. You clearly have the talent, but you're working at the Golden Oak. That tells me you're desperate. You're either hiding or you're trapped. I don't care which. 8 a.m. I'm going to find out who you are." He watched her walk away, her back straight, until she disappeared through the polished wooden doors. Mark Davis sat alone in the wreckage of his celebratory dinner. He pulled out his phone, not to check his stock, but to make a call. His head of security, a man named Thomas, picked up on the first ring. "Thomas," Mark said, "I have a name, Elena Martinez. Find everything." Mark did not sleep. He sat in the 4,000-square-foot Regency suite, a glass of the Highland 50 in his hand, and stared at the panoramic view of the city. But he did not see it. He saw only the cold, analytical eyes of his server. At 4:17 a.m., his personal encrypted device chimed a file from Thomas. It was labeled Martinez, E. Mark opened it. The file was thin, which in itself was terrifying. Thomas could find the bank records of a hermit. For a file to be thin meant the person was either a ghost or had been made a ghost. The file began. Name, Elena Martinez. Age 34. Education, B.A. Economics. Top honors, University of California, Berkeley. MBA Finance, Harvard Business School. Baker Scholar. Mark's eyebrows shot up. A Baker Scholar? Top 5% of the class? This was not some community college student. This was blue chip, gold standard, certified genius. The file continued. Work history, 2015 to 2020, senior analyst, mergers and acquisitions, Morgan Stanley, New York. Note, commendation record sealed, highly unusual. And then, nothing. From 2020 until last night, there was a 5-year gap. No credit card applications, no W-2s, no apartment leases. Her last known address was a luxury condo in Manhattan sold in 2020. Now she was listed as living in a small rented room in a poor neighborhood, a place she paid for weekly in cash. "What happened in 2020, Thomas?" Mark spoke to the empty room. He scrolled down. Thomas had dug deeper. He found her. She had not been a complete ghost. She had been blacklisted.
I note from Thomas's contacts, a former SEC enforcement agent. Name rings a bell. Martinez. She was the target of an internal review at Morgan Stanley, accused of front-running a deal. The SEC investigated. We could not make the case. The evidence was weird, too perfect. But Morgan fired her, and the word went out. She is radioactive. No firm on the street will touch her. Mark sat back. So that was it. A scandal. A high flyer who crashed and burned. It explained the job, the desperation, the cash payments. She was in exile from her own world, but it did not explain how she knew about his Nova deal. It did not explain the precision. The anger in her analysis was not just at his stupidity, it was at the sloppiness of the deal itself. She was offended by it. At 7:52 a.m., his assistant buzzed. "Mr. Davis, a Miss Martinez is in the lobby. She does not have an appointment." "Send her up," Mark said. When Elena walked in, she looked different. The server uniform was gone, replaced by a simple black turtleneck, dark jeans, and worn-out sneakers. Her hair was down, and without the severe bun, she looked younger and infinitely more tired. She carried no purse, no briefcase, just herself. "You came," Mark said, motioning to a white sofa. "You have a very persuasive head of security," Elena said, not sitting. "A man named Thomas visited my landlord at 6 a.m. My landlord is now concerned." "Thomas is efficient," Mark said. "Harvard, Morgan Stanley, a Baker Scholar. You were a rocket ship. Then you just stopped flying." Elena's jaw tightened. "You have my resume. Are we done?" "We're just starting." Mark stood and walked to the window. "I did what you said. I connected the dots. I had my real team, not the idiots from last night, run the numbers. You were wrong about one thing." Elena's eyes narrowed. "You said I was overpaying by 18%. "You were too conservative," Mark said. "Their third-quarter numbers were not just based on the bad technology. They were fake. The whole thing is a house of cards. You did not save me $90 million. You saved me the entire $500 million." He turned to face her. "The deal is dead. I am invoking the Material Adverse Change Clause. The Nova Board is going to sue. They will lose. And in 6 months, when they file for bankruptcy, I will buy their entire technology at auction for 10 cents on the dollar." "Good for you," Elena said, her voice flat. "That is excellent strategy." "It is your strategy," Mark countered. "Which brings me to my offer. I am offering you a job right now. You will lead my new internal M&A review. I will give you a team of 20. I will give you a $5 million a year salary. I will give you a signing bonus that will let you buy your old Manhattan condo back." He expected tears, gratitude, or at least negotiation. Instead, Elena Martinez laughed. It was a cold, dry, bitter sound. "No," she said. Mark was, for the second time in 12 hours, shocked. "What? Why? This is your way back in. This is your only way back in. I am the only person on earth with the power to clear your blacklist status and make the street forget." "You do not get it, do you?" Elena said, walking toward him. "You think this is about money. You think this is about a job. I had the job. I had the condo. I had the rocket ship, and I know what it costs." "What does it cost?" "Everything," she whispered, her voice shaking with a sudden raw fury. "It costs everything. You want to know what happened in 2020? You want to know why a Baker Scholar from Harvard is serving you overpriced steak?" "Yes," Mark said, "I do." "It was a man," Elena said, her eyes vacant. "A man just like you. His name was Richard Sterling." Elena finally sat, not on the plush sofa, but on a hard, modern art chair by the door, as if planning her escape. "He was not like you," she corrected herself, looking at Mark. "You are a shark. You are a predator, but you're honest about it. You eat what you kill. Richard was a parasite. He was a managing director at Morgan in my M&A group. He was my mentor." Mark remained silent, listening. "He was brilliant," Elena continued, her voice a monotone, as if reciting a case study. "He taught me everything. How to read a balance sheet, yes, but also how to read a room, how to find the leverage point, not just in the numbers, but in the person across the table. He was fatherly, or so I thought."
She paused, swallowing. "We were working on a major deal, a leveraged buyout of a medium-sized manufacturing company in the Midwest, Bradford Industries. They made ball bearings, simple, boring, but they had a massive pension fund, a very overfunded pension fund. I was the lead analyst. I built the model, and it did not work. The numbers did not add up. Richard's projections for post-acquisition revenue were optimistic, wildly so. He was triple-counting synergies, using a depreciation schedule that was not legally defensible. I went to him. I said, "Richard, this is wrong. The math is bad." He just smiled. That is the thing I remember, that smug, expensive tie-wearing smile. He patted my head, metaphorically, and said, "Do not worry, Elena. You are just seeing the trees. I am seeing the forest." But I could not let it go. I dug. I worked all weekend, pulling comps, running my own model, and I found it. He was not miscalculating. He was lying. The plan was not to save Bradford. The plan was to acquire it, load it with debt, terminate the pension, pay out the surplus to the new owners, us, and then sell the company for scrap. He was going to wipe out the pensions of 3,000 workers. It was evil, and it was brilliant. Mark nodded, a flicker of professional respect, the classic vulture play. "It was more than that," Elena said, her voice dropping. "It was his play. He had a private equity fund on the side, registered in his wife's name. He was the one buying the debt. He was going to make $100 million personally, while Morgan took all the risk. He was stealing from the bank, and he was stealing from those 3,000 pensioners. So I did what you're supposed to do. I gathered the evidence. I put the two models side by side. I found the offshore fund. I wrote a 40-page report. I was going to take it straight to the SEC and the Morgan Compliance Department on Monday morning." She stopped. Her knuckles were white. "On Sunday night, my apartment was raided by the FBI. Mark's expression did not change, but his focus intensified. Richard, he knew. He must have seen me digging. He was one step ahead. He had been building a shadow case against me. He used my own attention to detail, my own ambition. He fabricated emails. He used my personal laptop, which I had foolishly used for work one night, to plant data. He made it look like I was the one with the offshore fund. He made it look like I was trying to front-run the deal and blackmail him. I was suspended, then fired. The SEC investigation was a nightmare. My lawyers, they cost everything. The case was eventually dropped. As Thomas's source said, the evidence was too perfect. The U.S. attorney knew it was a frame-up, but could not prove it. And Morgan just wanted it to go away. They cleared Richard, praised him for rooting out a rogue analyst. He was promoted. I was blacklisted. My name was poison. No one would hire me. No one would even take my call. I lost my career. I lost my reputation. I lost my savings. And then, her voice finally broke, a hairline fracture. My father got sick, pancreatic cancer. The medical bills, they do not stop. They just come. I had sold the condo. I had sold the stocks, the car, the watch Richard gave me. I had nothing left. So I took a job at the Golden Oak because it paid in cash every night, enough to cover the hospice care, enough to be there. He died 3 weeks ago. The silence in the suite was deafening. Mark Davis, a man who moved markets with a single word, said nothing. Finally, Elena stood up. "So, no, Mr. Davis, I do not want your job. I do not want your money, and I do not want your life raft. I have seen what men like you and Richard Sterling do to get what they want. I have seen the forest, and I would rather just be left alone with the trees. Thank you for your time." She walked to the door. "Richard Sterling," Mark said, his voice a low growl. Elena stopped, her hand on the handle. "Of Sterling Capital Partners? Short, balding, always wears a purple, expensive tie no matter the suit? Looks like a smug little eggplant?" Elena turned around slowly. A new, dangerous emotion was on her face. Confusion. "Yes," she said, "that is him. He left Morgan to start his own fund. How do you know him?" Mark Davis smiled, and for the first time it was not a cold smile. It was the hot, hungry smile of a shark that has just scented blood in the water. "Because that little eggplant," Mark said, "has been trying to get a meeting with me for 6 months. He is pitching my family office on his new Green Energy Revolution Fund. He's desperate for my capital. He has a meeting with me in 3 days." He looked at Elena. "I am not offering you a job, Miss Martinez. I'm offering you a weapon." Elena stood frozen by the door. The air in the room had changed. The heavy weight of her past had suddenly been electrified by a new, terrifying possibility. "I do not understand." "It is very simple," Mark said, pacing in front of the window. "You think I'm like him. You are wrong. Richard Sterling is a thief. He stole from his own company. He stole from pensioners. That is sloppy, and it's weak. But more importantly, he is a liar, and he's trying to lie to me." He jabbed a finger toward the city. "His Green Energy Fund. I've had my team look at it. It's fine on the surface. Decent projections, but it's small, and he's desperate to scale. He needs a big fish, a cornerstone investor to give him legitimacy. He needs me." Mark turned to her, his eyes blazing. "You came in here with a story about a man who ruined you. I don't care about that. I care that a man who builds sloppy models and frames his subordinates is now trying to get his hands on my money." "So what?" Elena said, her voice trembling. "You will tell him no? You will warn people?" Mark laughed, a harsh barking sound. "Warn them, child. You are still thinking small. You are still the server. I'm offering you the chance to be the owner. Here's my real offer. Elena Martinez, forget the $5 million a year salary. That's boring. I'll give you a $1 million finder's fee, tax-free, for the Nova tip, right now. You can take it, walk out that door, pay off your father's medical debt, and disappear. Live in a quiet house by the ocean. I will never call you again." He let that hang in the air. $1 million, freedom, an end to the scraping and the shame. "Or," he said, "you take option 2. You come work for me, not as an analyst, not as a manager. You will be my personal strategist. Your title will be whatever you want it to be. You will answer only to me. You will have the full, unlimited resources of Davis Tech and my personal family office. You will have a black card with no limit. You will have Thomas, and you will have my undivided attention." "And what will I do?" Elena asked, her breath short. "Your first project," Mark said, his smile widening, "is to sit in on my meeting with Richard Sterling. He will not know who you are. You've been out of the game for 5 years. You're just Elena, my new assistant, and you're going to take your rocket ship brain and you're going to listen to his pitch, and then," he leaned in, "you're going to destroy him." "Destroy him?" "I'm not talking about an SEC complaint, Elena. That's what you did last time, and it got you fired. I'm talking about a real takedown. I want you to find the lie in his Green Energy Fund. I know it's there. I can smell it, the same way you smelled the rot in Nova. I want you to find the fraud, find the leverage, find the lie he's telling himself, and when you find it, we're not going to report him. We're going to break him. We're going to use it to take everything, his company, his reputation, his expensive ties. We're going to short his fund into oblivion, buy his debt, and leave him with nothing but the same shame and humiliation he left you with." "I'm not offering you a job, Miss Martinez," Mark Davis said, his voice a low, seductive promise. "I'm offering you revenge, a front-row seat, and I'm offering you the matches." Elena looked at the man in front of her. He was a monster. He was a shark, a predator, a titan, and he was without question the first person in 5 years to tell her the truth. He was not offering her redemption. He was offering her power.
She thought about the last 5 years, the smell of the hospice, the sneer of the bar manager at the Golden Oak, the avoided eyes of her former colleagues. She thought about her father dying in a cot when he should have been in a private room at the best hospital. And she thought about Richard Sterling getting promoted.
Elena Martinez took a deep, steadying breath. She stood up straight, and for the first time the weariness seemed to fall away from her, replaced by the cold, hard brilliance that had been dormant for half a decade. "When I worked at Morgan," she said, her voice clear and hard, "Richard was having an affair with a junior partner at our law firm, Baker & White. He was sloppy. He used his company email. I wonder if he is still that sloppy." Mark Davis's smile was blinding. "I will need a new laptop," Elena said, "the best one you have. And I will need a full team, data miners, forensic accountants, and I want Thomas full-time." "Done," Mark said, already dialing his phone. "Welcome back to the forest, Elena." The next 72 hours were not a blur. They were a concentration. Mark Davis moved Elena from the hotel to a corporate penthouse 2 floors below his own, a sterile glass-walled cage with a view of the entire city, but she never looked out the window. The grand ballroom on the 40th floor, a place of crystal chandeliers and gold plaster, was transformed. It became the war room. Cables snaked across priceless antique rugs, connecting high-end data processing servers. The walls were covered not with art, but with vast rolling whiteboards. The air crackled with the hum of electronics and the acidic smell of stale coffee and dry erase markers. Mark had flown in his sharks, a team of 6 of Davis Tech's most ruthless analysts and forensic accountants. They were men and women who normally lived in spreadsheets, but Elena was not like them. She was a general. She had not slept in 2 days. She was still wearing the same black turtleneck and jeans, her hair pulled back with a rubber band. She was a coiled spring, a predator that had finally been let out of its cage. The team at first was wary. They saw the server story their boss had briefly mentioned. They saw someone who had been out of the game for 5 years. "Ms. Martinez," one of the analysts, a sharp man named Kevin, said on the first night, gesturing to a screen, "with all due respect, the Green Energy Revolution Fund is clean. The holdings are all verifiable. ESG-compliant startups, solar, wind, water. It is boring, frankly, but it is not fraud." Elena, who was pacing, stopped. She turned. "You were looking at the wrapper, Kevin. Richard is not a green investor. He does not care about the planet. He is a vulture. He cares about a carcass. He is running the Bradford play. I know he is. He's just hiding the carcass better this time." "The Bradford play?" Kevin asked. "Find an asset, acquire it, load it with debt, strip the real value, the pension fund, the property, the hidden IP, and then sell the hollowed-out shell," Elena said, her voice a low, intense monotone. "He is doing it again. So stop looking at the green companies. That is the misdirection. Look for the outflow. Where is the capital leaving the fund? Follow the money, not the story." For 12 hours they did just that. It was Elena who found the first crack. "Here," Elena said, her voice sharp at 3 a.m. "These 3 companies, GreenPath Solutions, Earth Power, and Aquatech. The fund has made seed investments in all of them, but they are all registered at the same address, a P.O. box in Delaware." "They are shells," Kevin whispered, his eyes wide. He was a believer now. "He is using the Green Energy Fund to raise capital, then funneling that capital into these shells, which are then buying what?" Elena looked across the room to the silent man in the corner. "Thomas, I need to know what these shells are buying." Thomas was gone for 6 hours. He returned with a single thin file. He did not speak. He just placed it on the table. Elena opened it. "Not what, where," she said, a chilling stillness in her voice. "West Virginia, Wyoming. That is not green tech," an accountant murmured. "No," Elena said, a thin, cold smile touching her lips for the first time. "It is the opposite.
He is buying defunct mining rights, old coal mines, depleted lithium fields, brown assets, worthless, toxic land. Mark, who had been observing from a chair in the corner like a king watching a hunt, finally spoke. But why? It's a worthless portfolio. It's a hole to pour money into. It is not, Elena said, her brain working faster than the computer's. Not if you don't treat it as worthless. He has found a new pension fund to raid. She moved to a keyboard, her fingers flying. He is buying the land for pennies. Then he is getting new fraudulent geological surveys done. Here, Geostar Surveying, claiming the land is ripe for green redevelopment, or, even better, has undiscovered rare earth mineral deposits. She pulled up the Geostar reports. He's inflating the book value of this worthless land by 10,000%. He's selling shares of these shells, selling the lie to... Here it is. She froze. Her face, which had been alive with the thrill of the hunt, went
Green Energy Fund to the 3 shell companies, Green Path, Earth Power, and Aquatech. Your green fund has been buying toxic waste dumps, Richard. That is market speculation. Is it? Elena said. I also have the land title deeds, and just for old time's sake, Richard, I have your emails. Richard looked like he had been shot. You are still sloppy, Elena said, her voice laced with a cold pity. You are still having an affair with a lawyer, this time a Miss Sarah Collins at White & Case, and you are still using your company email to complain to her about how annoying the paperwork is for, and I quote, the stupid Central States Ironworkers Fund. Elena tapped a final key. The screen filled with Richard's own words, his own betrayals, his own sloppy, arrogant text. Richard did not just sit, he collapsed. He fell back into the $1,000,000 chair, his face a mottled gray. You, he whimpered, staring at her. The ghost. Mark Davis stood up, brushing his suit. He was enjoying this. Now here is what is going to happen, Richard, he said, his voice booming. In about 10 seconds, my team is going to execute a hostile, and by hostile I mean consensual, takeover of Sterling Capital. Your board, which we have been speaking to all morning, has been informed of your wrongdoing.
My board, Richard gasped. Oh yes, Elena said, her voice dead. They really did not like the part about the fraud, or the emails, or the ironworkers. You have been terminated for cause. Your shares are worthless. Your fund is being dissolved, and its assets, the worthless land, are being bought by me. You cannot, Richard whimpered. I can, Mark said. I just acquired, well, everything, all those toxic land assets. But I am not a brown investor, Richard. I am a green one. In 30 minutes, I am issuing a press release. Davis Tech is acquiring Sterling Capital's distressed land portfolio and committing $2 billion to a groundbreaking land reclamation and carbon capture project. I am going to be a hero. The planet will be saved. I will get billions in government subsidies, and it will all be built on the back of your failure. But the ironworkers' pension, Richard said, a last desperate, pathetic grasp at morality, will be made whole, Elena said. The first check Davis Tech is cutting is to them. You stole their money. We are giving it back with interest. Get him out, Mark said to Thomas, who stepped forward. Thomas put a hand on Richard's shoulder. The man was broken as Thomas pulled the hollowed-out shell of a man from his chair. Elena stood. Oh, and Richard. He turned, his eyes dead, his expensive purple tie now looking like a noose. You took my career. You took my name. You took 5 years from me. Her eyes bored into him. You left me with nothing. She reached down to the marble table and picked up a small, empty water glass, the kind a server would clear without a second thought. She held it up, a toast to the void. This is my 2-week notice. She did not throw it, she did not smash it, she simply dropped it. It did not break on the thick marble, it just made a dull, final thud, the sound of a life ending. 1 month later, the air at the Golden Oak was just as thick, the light just as golden and forgiving, the scent of old wealth and expensive beef just as strong. But for Elena Martinez, the world had been spun on a new axis. She was not here for a shift, she was not wearing an apron. Her hair was not in a severe functional bun. When she walked in, the host, a man who had never once made eye contact with her, nearly tripped over himself to pull out her chair. "Miss Martinez, a pleasure. Mr. Davis is waiting. Your usual table, of course. Table 1, the corner booth with a panoramic view of the park, the one reserved for titans and old family matriarchs, the one she used to dread approaching." Mark Davis was already there, nursing his Highland 50. He did not stand, but he smiled as she sat. It was a smile of alliance. Elena was transformed. She wore a custom-tailored dark blue designer suit that was so sharp it could have been cut from a block of stone. Her hair was styled in a sleek, professional bob that framed a face that was no longer haunted by tiredness, but sharpened by purpose. The stillness was still there, but it was no longer the stillness of containment. It was the stillness of pure potential energy. "The Nova portfolio," she said, her voice low and smooth. She slid a thin, state-of-the-art tablet across the polished wood. She did not need to open it. She knew every number by heart. "We acquired them at auction last week for pennies." "As predicted." "As you predicted," Mark corrected, not even glancing at the device. He was watching her. "I have already licensed the new gene technology from the Berlin lab. By combining their tech with Nova's old infrastructure, we have created a new proprietary sequencing machine. It is 40% faster, 60% cheaper, and the IP is airtight. It will corner the market in 6 months. Projections are robust." Mark let the word hang in the air, savoring it. Robust. I like robust. He took a long, slow sip of his scotch. "Robust means my new space launch program is fully funded." "It also means," Elena said, and her voice softened, a fractional, almost imperceptible change. "The new Martinez wing at Memorial Hospital's Oncology Center is fully endowed permanently. Their new research grant for early-stage pancreatic cancer detection is already posted." This was the part of her she had kept separate. This was the why. This was the non-negotiable term of her partnership. It was the part of her soul that was not for sale, the part that fueled the rest. Mark, a man famous for mocking all charity work as vanity projects, simply nodded. He understood. It was a display of power, just like his space program. It was just aimed in a different direction. He raised his glass. "To your father." Elena picked up her water glass, the heavy crystal cool and heavy in her hand. A month ago, she would have been terrified to break it. "To new beginnings." They sat for a moment in the comfortable, powerful silence of two predators who have agreed not to eat each other. It was this silence that the waiter shattered. He was young, barely 20, with a bright plastic smile, a shock of blonde hair, and a clear air of ambition. He was exactly the kind of person Elena used to be, smart, hungry, and convinced he was better than this. His name tag read Chris. Chris zeroed in on Mark, the obvious source of power. "Mr. Davis," he gushed, his voice a little too loud. "Another Highland 50. An excellent choice, sir. The Chateau 82 is also breathing beautifully tonight if you are thinking of dinner." He had Mark's order memorized. Good. He was trying. Then he turned to Elena. His smile faltered, becoming a mask of looking down.
The one parking your car, the one waiting your table, might just be the one holding all the cards. They're not just waiting on you, they are waiting. So, what do you think? Was Mark's offer a deal with the devil, or the opportunity of a lifetime? Was Elena's revenge justified? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below.
Thank you for watching. If you loved this story of karma, twists, and ultimate revenge, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel. Do not forget to share this video with someone who loves a good story. And most importantly, subscribe and ring that notification bell so you never miss another story of real-life drama and unexpected twists. We have new stories coming every week, and you will not want to miss what happens next.